Hi, everybody. We're back with Doc Sports, Doc's Daily Show here. Nice day yesterday. We had a nice little Griffin, myself, and Nick had a really good day, including we had a little parlay, underdog parlay in the NHL. Hopefully we'll maybe, you never know as we go kind of through these games what we come across. And of course, if you're new, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you want to put something in the comments section, if we have time, we'll get to it, especially if it's relevant. And then, of course, the reason why you guys follow us is our expert's opinion. And you can get our absolute best plays and get a free $60 account. Go to all new customers. Use that link right below here, docsports.com/free60. Get you $60 you can use on either. I know Robert's got a huge play today, both in the NBA and college basketball. We'll cover that as we go through the sports. And I have a big play in the NHL and several other cappers have big plays, including soccer tonight. I know Doc's and Indian Cowboy have a play in soccer. So let's get right to it, though. Let's talk about college basketball. I mean, the king of college hoops, Robert Ferrigno. You had to be in love with that. I mean, no matter what you're on or if you didn't bet that game last night, the Arizona-Iowa State game, this is why college basketball is so good. I mean, love. What a shot, and then to win outright as an underdog. What did you think of that one last night?
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, either you get it or you don't with college basketball, right? Like, so I grew up in the Northeast, okay? So you understand that up there, college basketball is a lot bigger there, Northeast and Midwest, than it is in maybe the South and in parts of the West. So I always grew up loving college basketball a lot more than the NBA, the same way that people down South love college football.
Yeah.
More than they do the NFL. They're like, it's the pageantry, it's the emotion, it's the connection with your alma mater and stuff like that. So for me, college basketball is always going to be number one. The Arizona-Iowa State game got off to a really choppy, sloppy start. Yeah. I actually stopped watching about halfway through the first half and then turned it on later in the second half when I saw that it was going to be a close game. But, I mean, anytime you got guys throwing in 50, 60-foot buzzer beaters to send games to overtime, you got kind of a regular season classic, huh?
Well, I mean, it's like March Madness started early almost. It almost felt like a March Madness game where it's like, Iowa State, I just thought was better. And they are better, to be very honest. If they played 10 times, they'd probably win, 7 of those games. But it's why March Madness and college hoops in general is so great. You only got to win one of these, in March Madness. And to hit it like he did. And then, sometimes that emotion wears off in overtime and then you kind of, still lose. To carry that into overtime and get the win. Big 12 is having a great year this year. I mean, we've seen some huge upsets and it's only going to get better with, UConn coming in next year. So super excited about March Madness ahead. And we were just talking, like some conferences you just hone in on as a handicapper or as a bettor. Big 12 is the one for me. The one I've had stayed away that we talked about is the Big East. Are you the same way as like you find these conferences you kind of fall in love with and obviously you win?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was always mid-majors, right? Those were the conferences that I would really just deep dive into because once you get a vibe or a feel for like the Missouri Valley or the Ohio Valley or the Mountain West or something like that, you just get a feel for these teams. They're a little more predictable, I feel like, in terms of, okay, they're going to show up for this game because this is a big rivalry. Or, in the Missouri Valley and Mountain West, home court advantage is everything. New Mexico is going to Boise State on that short line. You just kind of lean towards the home team because home court just pays out in the Mountain West, stuff like that. With the major conferences, it's just the talent disparity isn't as large. So the waves, I feel like, are a little bit higher with these. You have teams like Oklahoma that were really, really good at the beginning of the season. They hit conference play, and it's like they ran into a brick wall. So, it's tough, but we're negotiating it. We're navigating it. Right?
All right, so let's kick it off. Let's talk. Let's go with your first college basketball free play. What do you like for everybody today? I know you have several big plays, including a big play in college hoops here, 7-unit, right?
Okay, one of the reasons I feel like I'm like normally anyone that's followed me for the last 15 or 20 years, I usually follow a pretty predictable pattern in college basketball. I usually absolutely destroy it in November and December. Then January is always my worst month. We get into conference play, and I don't know what it is, but I just kind of go off the rails for a little bit into February. Then I regroup, finish February strong, big March Madness, winning season, right? Well, one of the reasons I feel like I'm having a lot more success at the beginning of conference play this year is that I've done a good job of A, limiting my cards, and B, taking some more risks with some more underdogs that I might normally ignore or be tempted to go the other way. So my first free play is one of those underdogs. I like Kentucky with the points against Tennessee here, okay? I think this is a vintage overreaction to some injury news. Kentucky may be down 2 starters. Andrew Carr, their starting center, he is definitely out. And it looks like Lamont Butler, the San Diego State transfer, he's questionable. I'm making this bet assuming he's not going to play. Looking at the line movement, we're open around 8.5 now, 9. Now we're up in that 10.5 range. I'm assuming that they're going to be down 2 starters. That's okay. We see this in every sport. Teams lose a starter, everybody else rallies. Everybody else steps up their game in the short term. Now, if they were without Carr and Butler long term for these next 2 or 3 weeks, yeah, like Kentucky is they're gonna hit the wall and they're gonna lose a lot of value. But right now, one game on the road against a rival with a double-digit cushion, I really feel like Kentucky can rally around the leader and put up a good effort. And just by the nature of the way they play, right? Kentucky takes a lot of threes, shoots a lot of threes. If they're hot tonight, they could threaten the Volunteers here. Tennessee is in that weird little letdown stage where they've had that huge game against Auburn, just an absolute slugfest, 53-51 over the weekend. They have Florida coming up this weekend. It's not going to be a letdown look-ahead game. Like, they're not going to look past Kentucky. However, knowing that Kentucky's not at full strength, Tennessee might pull back just that little bit where they let the Wildcats hang around.
I did a free video on this one yesterday, and last night, I like the under in this game as well. I just think Tennessee, Rick Barnes is just, he can coach defense, and it's hard to get guys, especially really good, guys that are probably playing at the next level, to play defense, but he's continually done it, especially at Tennessee. And I think this is a low scoring game. I just think they're not going to let Kentucky just shoot wide open threes. They're going to make them put the ball in the court. And to me, you just can't help with Kentucky. You got to make them beat you driving to the hoop. They're not the most athletic team. Kentucky's just, they shoot the ball extremely well. If you could take away the 3-point line, Kentucky's one of those, they could go far in the tournament this year, or they could be a first round out type of team, I think, because they live and die. Almost every team seems like they live and die by the 3-pointer, but maybe more so than anyone. And I like the under in this one. So as well. So there you go. I also think there's some interesting non-ranked games today. And one of the teams that I hate laying big numbers, but this Akron team, and, being from Ohio, I know a lot about the MAC. I just see a lot of them. I'm only about 30 minutes when I'm in Southeast Ohio from Athens, where OU's at. And when I'm in Cincinnati, I'm only about 45 minutes from Miami University. So I get a lot of these teams, not only on TV, I've seen them in person. And this Akron team is really good. And I think today, 15.5, I think it should be more like 18.5, and I still probably take them. Not a big fan of laying more than double digits, but sometimes you just have to, same way in football. I'm going to lay Akron minus the big number tonight. I think they're a dangerous team. Like, they're a team that can win multiple games in the NCAA tournament if they get the right matchups. Let's take Akron minus the points in the MAC action tonight.
I have to give a shout out here. Sorry to interrupt you, but I have to give a shout out to a good friend of mine, Dr. Matt Jurovich. He is actually the interim athletic director at Akron right now. And, you're right on the Zips. This team, they aren't just beating teams. They're absolutely punishing teams right now. They're a team, they only brought back 1 starter this year. So they were a team that I had circled in the MAC as maybe taking a step back. They have far superseded my expectations this year. I'm a little surprised that they're playing as well as they are, to be honest with you.
Well, when you look at the MAC, it's like now with the transfer portal, you only got to get 1 or 2 good guys, and you get one good, incoming freshman. All of a sudden, it's not like football where you got to have 10, 12, 14 guys. It's really changed. And some people are complaining for the mid-majors teams, because obviously if you have a really good, you recruit a kid, he turns out really well, like Sears did at Athens, at OU. Then he goes to Alabama and see what he's done there. People complain because, the mid-majors are hard to build programs because those guys are going to obviously leave for the NIL money and transfer without having to sit out. But it also works the other way, where you get guys that aren't playing at the Kentuckys, the Alabamas, the blue chips,
Right.
and they go there and they become maybe not a household name, but you can in the NCAA tournament. So I'm super excited. I actually think, and we've seen it already, there's not great teams in college hoops anymore. And I don't think there will be. I don't say ever again, but I just don't think it's going to be sustainable like the Florida and Billy Donovan runs, because kids are going to leave. They're either going to go to the NBA and get the money there, or they're going to go leave for higher NIL money around college basketball. So I think it makes it great for us bettors, though. I don't know.
Well, it's ironic that to your point, the talent is much more equally dispersed.
Yep.
We saw it in college football this year. I think that's the sport that really is going to see a sea change over the next few years, where, now the Alabamas and Georgias can't hoard all of that talent.
Yep.
Their 5th and 6th receiver is now going to an Arizona State or a Kansas State and being the number 1 receiver. Similar thing in college basketball. And to your point also about those kids that leave the mid-majors to go up, be happy for these kids, right? Like, recruiting is an inexact science. So you have guys that are probably better than where they ended up. They end up at Kent State when maybe they should have been starting at, one of these major schools the whole time. So be happy when those kids move up. Also, interesting, you mentioned the MAC. One of my favorite matchups about a week ago, a game that I had circled that I was really excited about. I liked Ohio over Toledo today. Not big on Toledo at all. However, Ohio, 2 huge injuries. AJ Clayton, Aiden Holloway, 2 starters, 2 of their leaders, right, are out for an extended period of time. Keep an eye on this Ohio team. I had to cut that play from the board today, even though I did like them over Toledo. But if those 2 miss any extended period of time, this Ohio team that was just kind of lurking, hanging around mid-pack in the MAC, I think they're going to be in a little bit of trouble. So AJ Clayton, Aiden Holloway, keep an eye on those names. And like I said, if they miss any time, Ohio is going to be a team that we're going to want to bet against.
All right, so let's look at one. I had a question, see if you have an opinion on this one. Minnesota, Michigan State. The Big Ten this year, with the obviously getting all the, West Coast teams from the Pac-12, it really has changed both for football and basketball. These are 2 obviously perennial Big Ten teams. Michigan State, I thought was going to take a huge step back this year. Has not happened. They've really surprised me. Minnesota was terrible starting out. Then they've been pretty good lately. Now you get a big number. This is, do you have an opinion on this one? This one's kind of like one of those, I either think Michigan State blows them out or Minnesota wins outright. I just think that's the vibe I had in this game.
This is actually a rated play for me, and I took Minnesota. I took the points in this one. It's a small play for me, obviously. But to your point, Minnesota, even though they're not winning a lot of games, they've been really, really competitive. They haven't really been getting blown out. They play at one of the slowest paces in the country, and they have a couple of big men that can hold it down on the interior, I feel like, against a team like Michigan State. I agree with you. I think Michigan State has superseded expectations. Now, I think they win this game, but 13 is a healthy number. Yeah. Michigan State has won 12 straight games. It's the second longest winning streak in the country after Duke was able to extend their streak last night. But that's kind of a good template, right? Like, Duke was a 22-point favorite at home last night against NC State with a 13-game winning streak. Had a big game over the weekend. I think they have North Carolina coming up this coming weekend. Perfect letdown spot, right? Well, Michigan State, they played in Madison Square Garden against Rutgers over the weekend. Got that win. Rutgers has some injury issues. Dylan Harper didn't play in the second half of that game. And this coming weekend, Michigan State is heading out to Los Angeles for their little road trip against USC, UCLA. Smack in between, you're a double-digit favorite against a kind of sneaky competitive Minnesota team. So if I miss this bet, again, that number's 13. If I lose this bet, I think it's going to be because Michigan State just blows their doors off and wins by 25. But I do think Minnesota can stay competitive in this game, and they're the beneficiaries. Okay, the Gophers got off. I think they were like 2-10 against the spread in their last 12 games. They were terrible in the non-conference. They looked like easily the worst team in the Big Ten. However, what happens? The odds makers start shifting those lines a little too much the other way. They've covered 5 out of 6, I want to say. And like I said, their losses have been competitive losses, due in part because they just needed some time to gel, and due in part because of that slow pace that they play out.
Just a huge look ahead spot for me. I just think Minnesota's going to keep this. I think they have a shot to win this game. Crazy. I always think, here's what I'm looking forward to this year. Teams that are getting ready to head out west from the Midwest that aren't used to this, and teams that are coming back from those West Coast trips. How does the Big Ten, both, from the West Coast teams and the Midwest teams, how does that handle? We saw it in football this year. Teams headed from west to east struggled a little bit, and vice versa. I think this is a look ahead spot. All right, let's turn to the NBA. I know you have a 7-unit play tonight, not the biggest card out there. Do you have a free play for everybody for tonight?
Yeah, I got another hold your nose and take the points kind of spot. I like Utah. I like Utah plus 12.5. Line opened at 10. Wasn't really on my radar, but then it jumped up to 12.5. I feel like really on air. The betting is like more. The majority of the tickets are on Golden State, but only about 55%. The money's about 70%, kind of where you would expect it in a game like this. But the thing about this is there's only 4 games on the NBA card tonight. I think the books know that bettors are going to gravitate towards those large favorites, gravitate towards those teams that they like. And Utah's bad, right? Like they're a tanking team. But they're not as bad as you think they are. Like they're 5-14 straight up in their last 19 games. Okay. So mission accomplished. They're losing games, but they're actually 13-6 against the spread. In those 19 games, they have only gotten beat by 12 or more points. So only just get completely blown out of the league. Only twice in 19 games. So they're losing games, but they're losing by 6, 9, 8 points. Golden State dealing with the injury issues that they are. They're not playing really well. They're coming off that game against the Lakers. They have Oklahoma City and Kevin Durant after that. So they got some bigger games that they could be looking ahead to after that Lakers loss. I just don't know where their motivation is going to be in this series. Golden State has dominated the series. But again, Utah has only lost by 12 or more to the Warriors twice in their last 11 meetings with Golden State. I think the points are good tonight. I'll give Golden State the win by about 6, but I don't think they're going to come close to covering that number.
Well, I mean, tonight is a lot of matchups. We have 4 games. Houston played last night in a back-to-back. LA played last night. They're in a back-to-back. Utah is in a back-to-back. Milwaukee is in a back-to-back. So that is a very tough spot for me. I'm always a little worried. I usually want to bet against teams in back-to-back, but sure. I guess the one that I think I would bet against tonight is I would take the Sixers, even though the Sixers have not been good. They've just been it's hard to say they're the most disappointing team. There's several of them out there, but they got to be because of injuries. With Joel Embiid, I mean, what's he played like 5-6 games this year? And you would think Maxey and George would be able to get them home for a couple wins, but it's been ugly, especially that loss to Denver. I think it was midweek last week. I mean, they got absolutely trounced. It was like 8, 9.5, and then before you look up, it's 25 points. I think tonight, though, the Lakers are one of those teams. You never know who's going to rest with the Lakers, so it's always dangerous. I would wait right until game time to play this because if LeBron and AD set out, who knows where this line will go. But if they play, I still think, they're not going to play extended minutes. I'm going to take the Sixers in a small play. I just think there's not a lot out there in the NBA for me tonight.
Yeah, my big play is actually in that Houston-Atlanta game.
Yep.
And to your point, that's one of the things I'm looking at is that back-to-back. And they both played not only back-to-back, but both were on the road last night. Atlanta was up in Minnesota, and Houston was able to steal one from Boston. And it's funny, I'm kind of kicking myself for not looking harder at Houston yesterday for exactly what you talked about. Boston spent over a week out on the West Coast playing some big games last week. They come home, they're favored against a scrappy kind of Houston team. You have that kind of jet lag, West Coast hangover thing. I think that's 100% what caught the Celtics last night. Houston was able to steal that outright win. Let's see what the Rockets do in my backyard here in Atlanta tonight.
Well, Nick actually gave out the Houston Rockets. We said they were a live underdog, so good play for Doc's Daily followers yesterday. I think when you look at the NBA, I always like in these games like this, I like player props. because I think the one thing about player props, and this is, better beware, as they say, is the blowouts. Because, you looking good in the third quarter, all of a sudden your guy doesn't play in the fourth quarter because they're up 15, 20, 25 points. And these games tonight could be those type of games. I mean, there isn't one of these games that you couldn't, like Utah could get blown out. Atlanta could not show up because it sounds like they could have a lot of injuries out. The Lakers, they can go one way or the other. And then the last game, Milwaukee and the Blazers. The Blazers have been playing great basketball right now. I mean, especially for bettors. I think they've covered 5 or maybe even 6 in a row. And they continue to get big numbers. I guess because you look at their record, they're just absolutely horrendous with their record. But they're only getting 5.5. That always kind of worries me a little bit I always try to set the lines myself before I look. And I thought this line should be about 7, 8 in that range. And we see 5.5. Do you think maybe that one is because maybe we don't know, with an aging team like the Bucks, that some of these guys might not play extended or might not play tonight?
Yeah, see, I'm weird. When it comes to the guys sitting in the NBA thing, I know I'm in the minority from a handicapping standpoint. That stuff doesn't bother me at all. I very rarely even look at who do I think is playing and who's not playing. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's kind of been a proven thing over the last 20 years, at least, that I've been betting the NBA, is that when a star player sits out, the other guys step up their game, right? Like in the short term, a lot of these teams can manage, especially when, as you mentioned, we're in kind of the dog days here, right? Like it's late January, like motivation, wanes on a daily and weekly basis with some of these games. So just because a star player is sitting, that doesn't necessarily mean that the other team has an advantage. Now, I do like what you're saying on this game with Portland. I think it's a red flag. I agree with you. I think this number closer to 7.5, it wouldn't have been on my radar at all. But getting down to that 5.5 range and with pressure, maybe kind of pushing it down even more. Milwaukee played last night. And they played great last night. They shot the ball and played really, really well in Utah. Do they have that in them? This is now their third game in 4 nights. And it's one of those weird me and Nolan from Strike Point Sports, we have a saying for these. We call these the Thunderdome games. These are the games when random Eastern Conference teams play random Western Conference teams that there's no rivalry. They don't know each other. They only see each other, twice a year. Milwaukee goes out to Portland once a year. This is just a weird game, right? In those games, the Thunderdome games, we always look at the underdogs in these interconference matchups. And this one kind of fits the bill to a T.
Yeah, I played it last night in the 3 free pick video I did. I had the Blazers, and I said, I think this line's going to come down because I think a lot of people think, and they're probably right, that Milwaukee will try to limit the minutes of their aging guys. I mean, it sounds like they're maybe in the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes, maybe not. I mean, the Zach LaVine. I mean, there's a lot of names that are being floated out there from Milwaukee, and they definitely need help. Their big 2 guys can carry them far. They cannot win a championship with just those 2 guys. They need somebody else. They know that. Sound like Pat Connaughton is a contract that could be bought out. So someone, could be like the 3rd or 4th team that gets thrown in there. I don't like the Jimmy Butler trade with them. I hope they stay away from that. I do like him for the Phoenix. I do, kind of weird that I do think if they can get Bradley Beal for him, I think that right. But I think the Bucks are one of those teams. They're playing. I have them as my number 3 team in the NBA right now in the power rankings. And considering, what were they, 2-6, I think, to start the year, I believe. 2-6.
Real sloppy. Yep.
And since then, I mean, they won the in-season tournament, and they've just been very good and good against good teams too. Which to me, that's what I judge them, because anybody can have a letdown game. I think tonight's a letdown game. We're going to take the Blazers in this matchup. Now let's go to the NHL. Small play for me as a free play. I don't know if you have anything, Robert, as a free play, but I'll go first. I do have a 7-unit play today. We are 4-0 last, I think it's 7 days. Had all 6 and 7-unit plays. I don't play a lot of the NHL, so when I play it, it's usually pretty strong. Yesterday, we gave away Griffin and Mike. We both had, I think they were plus 120, plus 130. And I said, how about we parlay them? And it wasn't Griffin, sorry, it was Nick. And he said, let's do it. I'm going back to the well here with Winnipeg. I like Winnipeg on the 3-way line. You can get it basically even money. I had Winnipeg as 2 strong plays back-to-back at home. Now they're headed on the road. I know they're not nearly as good, and that's been the case this year in the NHL. Road teams have just really struggled. Even really good teams on the road have struggled this year. But I think this is a good spot for Winnipeg. They had a day off. I think they'll take care of business, and I think they'll get us a nice win here at Montreal. It's minus 165 on the money line, which is a little rich for me. So I'm going to play the three-way line, which if you don't know what that means, it means it has to win in regulation. If it goes to overtime, you actually lose even if they win in overtime. So there you go. Small play in the NHL. Robert, you have anything for him in the NHL tonight?
Yeah, well, not in the NHL, but actually if you're watching live right here, you mentioned the three-way line. I always explain to people it's like soccer, right? Like with the ties, you gotta win in regulation. So I actually have a soccer pick today. It's a 2:45 start, so hopefully you're watching live. Hopefully you're watching this soon. But I like Stockport minus 1.5 goals. That's English League One action. Okay, it's lower tier. It's not the Premier League. It's English League One, but Stockport over Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury, 2 really emotional games in a row. Stockport lay the goal line. You're getting minus 1.5 goals. Plus 140, so they have to win by 2 or more. They won 2-0 at Shrewsbury earlier in the season. Shrewsbury coming off big upset over Wrexham, and then an absolute heartbreaker. 96th minute, they gave up the game winner in a home game over the weekend. I just don't think emotion, and they're the worst team in League One. They're in 24th place. They're probably going to get relegated. So this is a bad team as it is. That's in kind of a letdown spot. So I like Stockport there. And then just because we're throwing out free winners, right? Like normally we got 3 guys on the show. Let's just throw out more free winners. Take St. Louis tonight in college basketball at home against VCU. 5.5 points. VCU haven't played on the road a ton this year. They've
like 3, right? They only played like 3 games on the road.
Yeah, right. They've only had
how is that even? I looked at that. I thought it was wrong. I was like, I had to go back and look game by game. I'm guessing they played a lot of neutral site games. That must be
a few early in the season, but honestly, they just played at home a lot. They just really haven't played a very tough schedule. They've won 6 straight, and they're 5-1 against the spread in this game. So again, what we're going to start to see with the odds makers in VCU, they're going to start bumping up those numbers. This number probably should have been about 2.5, 3. VCU, one of those road games that they played, they lost at St. Bonaventure. They lost at New Mexico. So they can be had on the road. I just think that this is a game that St. Louis shows up for, and they play for the full 40. And this is one of those situations where if VCU does win this game as a road favorite again, I bet they don't cover 3 of their next 4 games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like with poker, you pay for information. Yeah. I'm willing to make a small play on St. Louis here, thinking that they will cover this game. And if I lose, I'm like, okay, I'm just going over the top these next few games because VCU, they're 13-6 against the spread on the season. That's just not going to continue for a high-profile mid-major like them.
Especially the A-10 is one of the tougher places to play on the road. These are basketball schools. Most of them don't have, in fact, most of them are subdivision or don't have football programs. So it is all about basketball. And that, that means big road, like tough road environments to win on. And I love this conference back when, Dayton used to be in there. And I mean, it used to be an absolute gauntlet. So make sure you like and subscribe though. We're going to give out, we're going to be Monday through Friday, 1 to 1:30-ish most days. We just kind of go till we don't have anything more. So Monday through Friday, 1 to 1:30. Make sure you follow along and like and subscribe. And then, of course, get in on that free 60 if you're new customers, free $60, DocSports.com/free 60. Robert has 2 7-unit plays, one in the NBA, one in college hoops. I have a 7-unit play in the NHL tonight. And then, of course, we got tons of other hot handicappers, so make sure you check them out in the grid. You can get their big play for today. Now, one question before I get you off here, because I might not have, depending on next week's schedule, Super Bowl odds come out. We see Kansas City slight favorite. Probably not, the way they play and going for a 3-peat and everything. I actually thought that might even be 2.5. So we're getting anywhere from 1 to 1.5. So kind of a pick 'em game. Any early feel on this one?
This is like a whole other show, right? Like, hopefully we will do that Super Bowl show. It's interesting that this is almost the identical line to when they met in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And I'll never forget that when that line came out after Championship Sunday, I was texting Rafael Esparza, texting some other people I know, being like, this line's a joke. Like, Kansas City is definitely better than Philadelphia, blah, blah, blah. They're going to win. They're going to cover. This number should be higher, right? Well, they did end up winning. They did end up covering, even though they absolutely got outplayed in that game. So here we are, just full circle, basically the same Philadelphia team, some different coordinators. I get it. Some rookies, basically the same Kansas City team, basically the same number in similar situation. It's too early to tell for me. I feel like over the next 2 weeks, Lightning will strike with me. It won't be a big play either way. I'm going to find value in the props. But where I'm going to go on the side in this, no, there wasn't one thing where when that number came out, I instantly was like, boom, this is it.
Do you think, though, like, to me, I was trying to figure out I think the Eagles are better than they were when they faced off last time because they have Saquon Barkley. Yep. And I think they found their identity, which is like, hey, we're not a passing team. We might be successful passing the ball, but we are a running team, and we're going to play to our good defense. They found that this year. I don't know if Kansas City's better or worse because every game they literally win by the skin of their teeth. Now, there's also something said with great coaching and, not turning the ball over, all those things that we've seen about Kansas City. But it feels like Kansas City's worse and Eagles are better, yet the line's still the same. Like, it messes with my brain.
I agree with you, but here's my thing too. And I went through this, again, I don't want to go off on a tangent on this, but I made this mistake with the Patriots and Tom Brady early on, right? Like, I was a hater. Those first 8 or 9 years, it's like Brady isn't as good. Yep. They're winning with the defense, blah, blah, blah. Like, looking for all these ways to discredit the first half of that dynasty. And then I don't know when it was, maybe 2011, 2012, where I just embraced it. I was like, you know what? All these guys do is win and cover. So, like, instead of being a hater, let me jump on this bandwagon. I've kind of done that with Kansas City. Like, I'm not a hater. I'm not a Kansas City fan. I like teams that make me money, right? Well, all Kansas City does is win and cover in these big games. So I'm not really in a hurry I'm 100% not going to jump in front of that and be the guy that bets against them. It's either bet on Kansas City or bet neither of the sides. And if Philadelphia wins, be like, okay, good job avoiding that bet. But listen, people, haters out there, all the Kansas City haters, you guys are looking at this all the wrong way, man. Like, all this team does is print money in these big games. Make it work for you. Okay. That way, if they lose, you're happy because you hate them and they lose. But if they win, you're happy because you win money. That's the situation you should be looking for, right?
Yeah. It's going to be, I actually think, usually the best two defenses, which is like, we haven't had that in a long time in the NFL but the offenses still score points. I mean, like, so you could probably make an argument for either side or either side on the total, which I think is awesome because for us bettors and us handicappers, you can find value if your opinion is right. And I think, like you said, the prop market is going to be really interesting. So we'll have next week, we already talked about it. Maybe one of the Doc's Daily Show will have like a four top where we have 4 handicappers and we kind of only talked NFL props, et cetera, because this is the one game where, I mean, you have so long to look ahead to it. You get so many props. So, all right, I just wanted to make sure I picked your brains, see if we had any early opinions on it. But don't forget, make sure you like and subscribe. Go over and get that free $60 account if you're not in yet. If you are in, we actually have a promo code. Let me put this out there. 10% off code to TUE10, WED10. So if you want to get the $30 plays instead of $30, it's $27 today for any of those top plays for today. So make sure you get on it. All right. Thanks, Robert, for joining in and filling in for Griffin and Nick, which are traveling to Vegas. And if you don't, make sure you get in tomorrow, 1:00 Eastern Standard Time. All right, guys, take it easy.